All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. It was recording my audio, so I had to. I wouldn't want to go into like 40 minutes into this teaching and then in the live stream, and then you know, you wouldn't hear anything. So I didn't want that. So I took this thing off, so you don't have to deal with that. Anyway, I was talking about a kingdom, in England, in the medieval London, well, no, medieval England, or, Spain or Germany, any of those things. Y'all know about that type of history. You've had history class. So you should understand that when it comes to a kingdom or establishing a kingdom, in order for a prince to become a king, he must have a helpmate. He must have a queen by his side. This is the only way for a prince to rightfully inherit a kingdom. Now, I was proceeding to talk about a crown. Now, a king wears a crown, but also a prince wears a different crown. Okay, so there are different crowns in the kingdom. Okay, just a general thing to keep in mind. Now, you see throughout the New Testament, I'm going to focus just on the New Testament, what they call the Brit Hadashah, Brit Hadashah. If you search crown, you'll come up with things like the crown of life, crown of glory, crown of gold, crown of 12 stars. Okay, you'll see that there's different crowns. There's not just one type of crown. So I want you to keep that in mind, because you're going to see that in the book of Revelation, that there's more than one crown. Okay, I want you to keep that in mind. So a king's going to wear a certain crown, a prince is going to wear a certain crown, and so forth and so on. And different authorities within the kingdom, within the family of the kingdom, will have different crowns. So just keep that in mind. Now, let's look at it. Now, keep in mind that a prince must have a queen to become a king. So, when the question you need to ask yourself is, when does Yeshua HaMashiach of Nazareth, when do you see him in the book of Revelation actually wearing a crown? Because that is the marker that lets you know that he has become king, because he has received his queen. Keep that in mind. I'll say that again. We need to now ask the question, where do we see in the book of Revelation where Yehoshua, the Son of Man, has a crown on his head? Because that means he is now king. And that also means if he's now king, he has received his queen, his bride. He has married her. Okay? Now, let's look at Revelation 14, verse 14. Turn with me to Revelation 14, because it's going to get really good. Okay, in the beginning of that chapter, you'll see, look, chapter 14, verse 1. And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his name and his father's name written in their foreheads. Who's right next to him? Who's right next to him? Whoa, he just became king. Who's right next to him on the mountain, mind you, Mount Zion? Okay, think about that. But that's not the verse I think I've actually quoted. I just thought about it as I was reading, talking to you all. Let's look at Revelation 14, verse 14, where we actually see him with the crown. And it reads, and I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and upon the cloud sat like unto the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. Okay, there he is. He is. It's game over. Boom. All right. And some time expires, and later on in Revelation chapter 19, verse 12, we see him again with some more crowns. Let's look at it. Revelation 19, verse 12. Turn with me. His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns. And he had a name written, and a name that no man knew but himself. So he has a name for himself, and nobody's going to know his name. Nobody. Okay? Now, keep in mind, we see him now, Yehoshua. Now we see him initially just with a golden crown, and now after he used that sharp sickle, taking the kingdoms, boom, boom, boom. Now you see he's got many crowns on his head. And someone goes, many crowns on his head. Okay, well, I can confirm. I've had a dream before where I've seen crown, and you can actually put a crown on top of another crown. So you can imagine Yehoshua probably has a crown on top of another crown, on top of another crown, on top of another crown. All the kingdoms that he's taken over on the earth. It's like all these crowns. It's got on his head by the time you get to Revelation 19, verse 12. Then we see him again in the same chapter. Now we're going to see something different. Remember in Revelation chapter 1 that I read in the previous video that he, in the beginning of Revelation chapter 1, he is called the Prince of the Kings of the Earth. Now, let's check what happens in Revelation chapter 19, verse 16. And it reads, and he has on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, Melech ha-Malakim and Adonai ha-Adonim, which means King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Finally, he is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Okay? So, that is amazing. We see him now as a king. He's no longer a prince. Now, let's go back. Well, actually, I think I read those verses. Okay, yeah, I did. I read Revelation chapter 19, verse 12 and 16. If you want to, you can see in Revelation chapter 19, verse 11, the verse before verse 12, you see it says, and I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he doeth judge and make war. And then it goes on to say, his eyes, verse 12, his eyes were as flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns. And he had a name written, a name that no man knew but himself. Okay? So, and then verse 16, I just mentioned King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He is in full kingship authority, taking over the kingdoms of the world. Now we need to ask ourselves this question. Where is this declaration where King Yeshua proceeds to take over the kingdoms of the world to establish his kingdom on earth, which I call, in this case, the kingdom of Israel. He's establishing his kingdom, the kingdom of Israel. Where do we see him? Where do we see in the book of Revelation where it says he's actually taking over the world? He's actually taking over the kingdoms of the world. And this is where you will find, my friend, the bride. Let's go find her. Let's turn back to Revelation chapter 11, please. Go ahead and do it. Give you a few minutes. Okay, you probably got it, right? All right, good. Okay. Let's just go and read this, yo. All right. But I want you to pay close attention to Revelation chapter 11, verse 15. And it says, and the seventh angel sounded, and there were great voices in heaven saying, the kingdom of this world are become the kingdoms of Adonai and of his Mashiach, the Messiah, and he shall reign forever and ever. That is where you see the declaration of the kingdoms switching. Okay? So we know something had to happen right before then. The wedding had to occur right before then. Now in heaven, they're like, it's game over. He's got his bride. Yeshua got his bride. It is time to take over. All the kingdoms of the world will become the kingdoms of Adonai and his Mashiach. At chapter 11, verse 15 of Revelation. Now, Here's the bride. I'll show you her. Here we go. Start at the beginning of Revelation chapter 11, verse 1. Verse 1 reads, "And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise, measure the temple of Elohim, and the altar, and them that worship therein. But the court," verse 2, "but the court which is without the temple leave out, measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles." Okay, hear that word. It's very important you hear that word, Gentiles. Okay, "and the holy city shall they tread underfoot 42 months. 42 months is 3.5 years. The Gentiles will trample on the city for 3.5 years. Okay. And well, I can go into another Antichrist thing about that, but that'll be for another time. And then verse 3 says, "And I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth." Okay, that's 1,260 days. That's 3.5 years. Now keep in mind, 3.5 years. Where's the other part in the New Testament you've heard about 3.5 years? Who else did 3.5 years ministry? Who else did 3.5 years ministry besides the 2 witnesses? Yehoshua, Yeshua HaMashiach of Nazareth. Yes. Okay. He had a 3.5 year ministry, right? With his 12 disciples. Okay. Like the bridegroom, so is the bride. If the bridegroom did it, the bride will do it. Duh. Okay. But y'all smart. Anyway, I'm just being funny about it. Anyway, okay, so this is the bride you seeing right here. Okay. She's going through her 3.5 year ministry, just like the bridegroom, Yehoshua, went through his 3.5 year ministry. Now I got this revelation back in June, but I didn't make the connection until recently. Okay. The part I'm sharing about the bride, that this is the bride. Okay. That was recent. Okay. The other part, everything precept by precept, little bit by little bits. Okay. These are the 2, verse 4. I'm sorry. Verse 4. I'm so excited. "These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 candlesticks standing before the Elohim of the earth." Verse 5. "And if any man will hurt them," okay, "fire proceeds out of their mouth and devour their enemies. And if any man hurt them, he must in the same manner be killed." Okay.